This happened 10 years ago. We were heading east toward Maine that day. Me, my sister, and her fiancé. We'd left Boston. Our plan was simple. We were going to spend a few days at the coast, do some camping, and slowly make our way north. On our third day, as it was getting dark, we were driving down Route 1. We'd left the city behind, and the road signs were starting to thin out. A fog was rolling in from the sea, slowly settling over the road and making it hard to see. My sister's fiancé, Mark, was driving the SUV. It was his. He was a pretty reliable, nice guy. We were all a bit tired. Some classic rock was playing in the background, and we had all sunk into a strange silence. My sister was in the back seat, just staring out the window, seeming lost in thought. Mark was focused on the road, and I was, as usual, scrolling through my Instagram feed. After a while, Mark started to slow down. He said he saw someone up ahead, and there he was. Someone really was standing right there by the trees. We froze. Seeing anyone out here, in the middle of nowhere in weather like this, was enough to make your skin crawl. As we got closer, we could make out a tall, middle-aged man, almost completely still, his thumb out, hitchhiking. But his clothes were bizarre. He was wearing a red and white patterned onesie that covered his entire body. It gave him a strange, unsettling vibe. Mark suggested we just drive past. He didn't want to stop because the guy didn't seem right. There was definitely something off about him. I felt it too. But my sister disagreed. She couldn't ignore someone who might need help. That's just the kind of person she is. I guess we were outvoted. Maybe we were just being paranoid. As we pulled up, we saw that he was older than us, maybe in his late 30s. The man had strange marks on his face. No, more like scars. Cuts. And that wasn't all. The shoes he was wearing didn't match. They weren't even the same color. It was like there was a clown without a mask standing in front of us. My sister paused for a second. She seemed to be in a state of shock. So I took charge. I was the oldest and felt I had to step up. I asked him what he was doing out here and where he needed to go. He said he was stranded and only needed a ride home. His place was supposedly just up the road, and he asked if we could drop him off. We didn't mind giving him a ride. He didn't seem like a talkative person. At least his voice sounded normal, if you didn't count his appearance. My sister was clearly uncomfortable with how he looked, so we swapped seats. Mark gently hit the gas, and we were back on the road. For a while, there was silence. Nobody said a word. When I shifted my gaze from the window to him, I noticed his eyes had slid over to my sister. It made me extremely uneasy. Even if I told myself I was imagining it, I couldn't shake the feeling. So, I started talking to try and draw his attention elsewhere. I tried to be as polite as possible and asked for his name. He said it was Daniel, but that he preferred Danny. I continued with basic questions: what he was doing out here, how he got stranded. He told me he had a house on a hillside and that his wife and daughter were waiting for him. But he never said anything about how he got stranded on the road. This was pretty weird, because we were in the middle of absolute nowhere, with no sign of civilization for miles. Then Mark chimed in. "You sure you didn't get lost? We're kind of in the middle of nothing." He sounded a bit sarcastic because Mark had also noticed the guy's eyes lingering on my sister. But Danny's demeanor suddenly changed. He got serious, his face turning much colder. It was like Mark had asked something he shouldn't have. The tension spiked, and I quickly changed the subject. My sister wasn't making a sound. I could see she was terrified. We knew not to ask any more questions, so we sank back into silence. He wasn't normal. We could all feel it. A potential scuffle wouldn't have been a problem for Mark and me. but it was hard to suppress the growing dread I felt for my sister. Having Danny sitting silently between us only amplified the fear of what he might do at any moment. Mark or my sister might not have noticed, but there was a bulge under his onesie, right on his belt. I was afraid he was carrying some kind of weapon. The air in the car was thick. After about 3 miles, we finally reached a hillside. Then he said he'd get out at the side of the road. But right before he got out, the intensity of Danny's stare at my sister had become too much, even for me. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Is there a problem with my sister?" I asked, putting as much stern emphasis into it as I could. He turned to me and said she looked a lot like his daughter. I don't know what kind of face Mark and my sister made, but I was stunned for a second. It sort of explained things, but that creepy face and the mocking tone he used. I wasn't sure if he was serious, but I felt fear deep in my bones. Then he didn't say another word. He just walked off into the trees without even looking back. He got out in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't the slightest sign of civilization, apart from the asphalt road. It was hard to believe what we had just seen. I took a deep breath and told Mark to hit the gas and get us the hell out of there. About half an hour later, my sister suddenly started screaming. Mark slammed on the brakes, and we asked her what was wrong. I don't know how he did it, but he had cut off a chunk of my sister's hair. Neither Mark nor I had noticed. For the rest of the drive, my sister was on edge, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. Mark and I tried to calm her down, but it was a serious problem. She just wouldn't settle. Thank God she's doing much better now. But what happened that day was a nightmare. We swore never to let another stranger into our car again. There was a time in my life when I had to live on my own, a period I never want to revisit, one I'd erase from my memory, if I could. Everything had come crashing down all at once, and I was barely holding it together. For 10 years, I'd been living with my boyfriend, and things were fine, until I found out he was sharing our bed with another woman. My world turned upside down in an instant. It was like a punch to the gut. We had plans for the future, but suddenly, none of them mattered anymore. I couldn't stay in that house. I needed a fresh start. I was self-aware enough to know I couldn't let myself spiral into depression. Going back to my family home was an option, but I couldn't stand my mom's new husband, so I ruled that out immediately. That left me with one choice: renting a place of my own. Luckily, my job made that doable. My new house was within walking distance of work. The neighborhood was quiet and pleasant. My next-door neighbors were a friendly couple with a shy, sweet 8-year-old daughter named Chloe. But something caught my eye when we first met. The woman had bruises just below her neck. At first, I thought she might have bumped into something. Maybe I was just convincing myself, because it didn't look like that at all. The couple seemed perfectly harmonious on the surface, but deep down, I felt uneasy, like I was missing something. Still, I told myself not to pry. About a week passed. I was keeping busy with work, slowly settling into my new routine. Things were going okay. No weirdness, at least not yet. One evening, my neighbors invited me over for dinner. That night, I noticed something again. The bruises on the woman's neck had multiplied. My unease grew. Something was going on, and I was being pulled into it without even realizing it. After that, I tried to keep my distance. Still, Chloe would occasionally knock on my door, usually to grab a snack or just hang out. I didn't mind. In fact, I found her presence oddly comforting. She was getting used to me, and I was getting used to her. The strange thing was, she always came alone. Her parents never tagged along. I couldn't wrap my head around how they let a little girl wander around by herself like that. What if something happened to her? They didn't seem like the type to be so careless. One night, Chloe knocked on my door, which surprised me because she usually came by during the day. When I opened it, she was crying, begging me to help her mom. I had no idea what was happening, but hearing those words from an innocent kid sent a chill down my spine. Normally, I might have brushed it off, thinking she was just a kid who didn't know what she was saying. But seeing her standing there in the middle of the night, those desperate eyes staring up at me, it was impossible to ignore. I couldn't just turn away. So, I took her hand and went to their place. When we got there, the door was slightly ajar. Chloe must have left it open. The moment I stepped inside, I saw the woman lying unconscious on the floor, her arms covered in bruises, and worse, there was blood. It looked like she'd been hit on the head. I felt like I was going to throw up. I had a panic attack, completely lost about what to do. Her husband was nowhere to be seen. I tried to stay calm and called 911 right away. The woman was rushed to the hospital, and thankfully, her condition wasn't critical. Chloe stayed with her grandmother during that time. The husband? He was gone, and worse, the woman wouldn't say a word about it. She didn't press charges, acting as if it was all normal, like it had happened countless times before. But this time, the police were involved, so things were a bit more serious. She never set foot in that house again, and soon after, the place was emptied out. If Chloe hadn't knocked on my door that night, if I'd been a few minutes late, things could have turned out so much worse. Honestly, every time I close my eyes, I see Chloe standing at my door that night. Her tiny eyes were filled with terror. I guess I should be thankful that nothing bad happened to her that night. I had a very close friend since elementary school named Lily. Sometimes she was even closer to me than my own siblings. We shared every moment together. Lily was an only child. She lived in a house with a large garden on the outskirts of town. Financially, she was much more comfortable than I was. My life, on the other hand, was a stark contrast. I grew up in a crowded family, on a street packed with houses. It wasn't always easy. I never had the personal space most people crave. Because of that, I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy toward Lily sometimes. But that didn't mean I resented her. Like I said, we were incredibly close. People often say, if you've got a big family, you're the happiest person in the world. I don't entirely agree. As we grew up, it only got more unbearable. You yearn for a quiet space of your own. And honestly, that's exactly when everything began. That week, Lily's family was out of town, and she invited me to stay at her place until they returned. I didn't hesitate to say yes. I was desperate for a bit of privacy, a chance to breathe. It felt like a gift from above. Her family knew and loved me, and the idea was actually theirs. They didn't want their daughter staying alone. I found it genuinely touching, I'll admit. Getting permission from my family was easy too. I think they were secretly thrilled to have their grumpy daughter out of the house for a few days. It was a holiday week, so there were no issues. The first night went smoothly, aside from a couple of odd moments. While grabbing water from the kitchen, I noticed some movement in the bushes in the backyard. The garden was large and fenced, partially surrounded by trees. It felt like I saw a silhouette near the trees. The bushes rustled suddenly, and the figure vanished from sight. It happened so fast, probably just a bird, but I couldn't shake the slight chill that ran through me. During the day, things felt normal. We invited a few friends over and had a great time. But that evening, something strange happened. Lily had gone to the store, and I was taking a shower. I heard the front door open. I assumed it was Lily since she had a key and didn't ring the bell. But something felt off. She wasn't making any noise. I called out, but there was silence for a moment. Then I heard the door close again. I rushed out of the bathroom to check, but the door was still locked, and there was no sign of anyone. I wasn't sure if I'd misheard, but I felt uneasy. When Lily returned, I asked if she'd come back briefly, maybe forgetting something. She said she'd just gotten back from the store. I wanted to tell her what I saw, but I didn't want to scare her. My goal was to make her feel comfortable, not the opposite. Still, she quickly noticed something was wrong. She asked what was going on, but I brushed it off with, I must have just imagined it. Maybe I was being paranoid, but the fear I felt in that moment was real. That night, Lily decided to sleep in the guest room, and I'd stay in her room. She offered to share a bed, but I declined. I think she sensed my discomfort and wanted me to rest easy. It was our last night. Her parents were coming back the next day. After some insistence, I gave in and agreed to stay in her room. It was spacious, far different from the guest room. Her bed was soft and cozy, and I fell asleep almost instantly. Then I heard noises, sharp, disruptive clicks that jolted me awake. I cracked my eyes open and realized the sounds were coming from the window. Probably just rain, I thought. But when I parted the curtains, I saw a terrifying scarecrow impaled on a stake right outside the glass. I can't describe the scream I let out. It felt like it echoes through the whole house. I bolted to the guest room, bursting in and locking the door behind me. Lily shot up from bed, startled. I explained everything, and she tried to calm me down, but my heart was racing uncontrollably. Lily knew me well enough to take it seriously. I wasn't one to joke around like that. She called the police, who searched the house and yard thoroughly, but found no solid evidence. There were signs someone had been in the garden, but nothing conclusive. They figured it was probably a prank. It didn't feel like one to me. Lily stayed at my place that night, and her parents beefed up security as soon as they returned. Nothing strange has happened since, but I still can't bring myself to sleep alone. 15 years ago, something happened that I still can't get out of my head. That night, our parents were going to be late coming home for some reason, so my brother and I were alone at the house. It wasn't the first time for me or my younger brother, Cole, who's a year younger than me. We were used to it. Our parents were busy people, so I figured it'd just be another ordinary night. We lived in a 2-story spacious house on the edge of the neighborhood, where houses were few and far between. The nearest neighbor was 100 steps away, so at night, the streets were completely silent. It was a rainy evening. Can't recall the exact month, but it was heading toward winter. Cole was in our dad's room, glued to the gaming console with headphones on, completely absorbed in the game. I decided to turn in early, switching off the lights and slipping into bed, since I had school the next day. I don't remember what time it was, but close to midnight, I woke up to faint noises coming from the kitchen. Probably Cole grabbing a snack, I thought, so I didn't pay much attention at first. But the sounds dragged on and started to feel off. The fridge door stayed open too long. Plates were clinking together. Something was being rummaged through. I started to doubt it was Cole. The doors were locked, the windows shut. It seemed impossible for someone to just waltz into our kitchen. Still, something felt wrong. As I was wrestling with these thoughts, a loud thud jolted me out of bed. I was sure it wasn't Cole. I thought about checking, but the idea of facing the unknown was unnerving. Still, I didn't have much choice. The lights were off, and I didn't dare turn them on. As I crept toward the kitchen, the sounds got clearer. The murmurs weren't words, just low, garbled whispers, not like someone muttering to themselves, but more like an unconscious, repetitive hum. When I reached the kitchen door, it was slightly ajar. The kitchen light was off, but the window was wide open. Fear gripped me completely. The kitchen looked empty, but when I stepped inside, it was a mess. Food, trays, spoons. Everything was strewn about like a battlefield. I quickly shut and locked the window. When I flicked on the light, I saw something even more unsettling. Muddy, barefoot prints on the floor. They were too delicate for a man's feet, too big for a child's. They looked like a woman's. It was raining outside, so I was certain someone had come in through the window. The prints trailed out into the hallway. When I followed them, they led straight to Cole's room. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it'd burst. I woke Cole up and warned him. He didn't believe me at first, but when I showed him the footprints and the wrecked kitchen, he had no choice but to accept it. We were too scared to leave the house. We went upstairs and peered out the window, and there, by the trees in the distance, we saw someone. They were moving slowly, quietly watching our house. We couldn't make out their face, but we could tell it was a woman. We were terrified she'd come back. I could see Cole was way more scared than I'd realized. I worried it'd leave a lasting mark on him. We went downstairs, grabbed the emergency phone Mom kept for situations like this, and called our parents. When they got home, things didn't go well for us. They didn't believe our story and thought we were the ones who'd made the mess. I couldn't blame them entirely. We'd sometimes fight and trash the place. They assumed we were making excuses, but that wasn't the case. Still, we couldn't escape a hefty punishment. A few years later, we had to move because of Dad's job. Nothing too strange happened in the meantime, but just before we left, rumors started circulating in the neighborhood about a barefoot woman wandering around. We never found out who she was before we moved. Later, I learned the open window was actually because Cole had burned something in the kitchen and was too scared to tell Mom. As for the footprints, they'd mostly dried by the time our parents got home, but the muddy marks were still visible. That's why they thought we'd been running through the house with muddy feet. But the truth was something else entirely.